Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the supernatural horror film Smile, written and directed by Parker Finn and released September 30th, 2022.
Ooh. I saw this one in theaters.
You did, and I didn't. It was... I just don't get to the theaters as often as I'd like. I don't know, it's just things come out streaming pretty early on, and so then I'm like, I'll just wait. And then they come out and I still don't watch them. So then I say, let's cover them on the podcast. So then I have an excuse to actually have to watch them because they've been on my list. So that's what happened here.
Yeah, that does happen from time to time with this podcast. A lot of times, though, on the flip side of that, you bring movies to the list that I had no interest in seeing or didn't want to see. And I either end up loving it or I am indifferent. I'm not sure. Although I feel like I like most of the stuff we cover. There are a few exceptions that if we ever cover them, I'm not sure a second viewing is going to change my mind.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see. If that ever happens, if we ever cover those movies, we'll see if I change my mind, but I probably won't. I'm very stubborn sometimes when it comes to things.
That's okay. But yeah. Hey, I think all the way back to season 1, turned around The Ritual on you, so.
You did, because I did not like that movie the first time. I was not excited to cover it because I didn't like it. But going through it, I learned to appreciate it so much more. And the Jotun was quite a memorable monster.
Yes.
Really, yeah, it was great.
All right. But yeah, this one is Smile, as we said.
Yes, this one is Smile. Parker Finn, directorial debut.
Yeah.
I actually did go back and watch the short film that this one was based on. And it's tied into this one, which I'll talk about later.
Cool.
But we might as well get cracking the same way that we always do, which is production notes. So this was filmed in North Arlington and Jersey City, New Jersey. As I just said, it was directorial debut for Parker Finn. He based Smile on the 2020 short film, which was called Laura Hasn't Slept. The budget was $17 million. It grossed $217.4 million at the box office. It was 115 minutes long. Pake, bring on the synopsis.
All right. After witnessing a bizarre traumatic incident involving a patient, a psychiatrist becomes increasingly convinced that she's being threatened by an uncanny entity.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, very uncanny. That's how I would describe that. I didn't know exactly how to describe it. So, as we break our points down into like characters or groupings. And so I made like a little like point like list for the monster, the thing, whatever. I don't have any notes in there at all. So I might as well just delete it. I'm not going to use it because it all goes back to Rose. But I left it in there just because I didn't know what to call it. So yeah, I have Rose, pretty much all of my notes. That's about it.
Me too.
And then, like, a tiny little bit about Joel, a couple of other casting notes, and, like, other things about some other characters. And then an entire section title, but with no notes under it, called Smiley, Smiley, Bobiley, Banana, Fana, Fofiley, Fee, Fi, Mo, Miley, Smiley. So.
Did you really type that all out?
I did.
Okay. Well.
Just for no other reason to be able to read it to you and tell you that I did it and have it there in front of me. To remind myself that I did that. So, yeah.
It's such a shame that we never laugh on this podcast.
I know.
We're
way
so
too serious all the time.
Oh, goodness.
I know, we're going to cover a movie like this, and I'm not going to have one single joke in my notes at all.
So you had to put it at the top.
No, I've got plenty of jokes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You know me.
I do.
There are very few movies that elicit a jokeless note-taking session from me.
I can think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Impossible. Like, The Impossible was so... it's one of our memorable episodes. For that reason, there was no joking, really. We were very serious the whole time. So, yeah. It'll be interesting to listen to what your jokes are. There are some things, I made a few notes here and there that are not jokes, but they're just kind of like, oh, so they did that.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see. Yeah, I feel like we have to get started with Rose, who is played by Sosie Bacon, Kevin Bacon is her father.
Nice.
Kira Sedgwick is her mother. And she's an actress, obviously. I had seen her previously in 13 Reasons Why. She had not a huge role, but it was kind of like a mid-level role in that series. She did a great job there. Big difference playing a doctor from playing a high school student.
Yeah, that's quite a jump. If she looked anything like she does in this movie, I don't think I could buy her as a high school student.
She didn't. She didn't. She was wearing, I think, space buns, and she was like a barista, like had a part-time job as a barista. She looked very much kind of student-ish. Yeah. Not in this movie. In this movie, she's very professional.
All right. So, yeah, she plays the character of Rose Cotter, which... We start this movie off on a very depressing note, with this young Rose, 10-year-old Rose, finding her mother dead, OD'd on pills and booze. And I was like, well, good for her growing up to become a psychiatrist, hopefully facing her own trauma and helping others face theirs. I was like, that's a good route for somebody to take in life after something like that, for sure.
Exactly. And you would think that someone who went through that at such a young age would have faced all of their demons or confronted at least a majority of them. But I don't get the opinion that Rose really dealt with things.
Yeah, which I think is pretty common, because I do, not to like call anybody out if they're listening to this, I love you and I mean it in the nicest way possible. But I have several friends who are like social workers or counselors, psychiatrists, things like that. And a lot of them, have a lot of issues, like they struggle with facing their own stuff, because they're real good at like helping other people through their stuff, but they don't take their own advice very well. No. Most people don't in any regard, like.
No, you don't. And I think that sometimes it's easier to focus on fixing somebody else's issue than dealing with one that's plaguing you. Mm-hmm. You can push it out of your head long enough to focus on somebody else. You feel like you're accomplishing something, whereas if you're dealing with something that is in your past that caused you stress or depression, it can sometimes be so time-consuming that it sucks your life out. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so it's a good thing for her to do, but it makes sense that, she could also find a way to bury herself in that work to not really address her own things. But we find out that, she at least did have a regular therapist that she went to see. She went and saw Dr. Northcott. But it seems like that has not been a regular thing for a little while. So,
right.
Yeah.
We learned, too, from her manager or her boss that she's been working like 80-hour weeks for months, which that takes a toll on someone.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you don't get any break for your mental health. Yeah. You're constantly getting battered with no rest. A person can only take that for so long before they, crack. And so you do wonder if maybe some of these events that happened in her life to cause the whole outcome of this film, if those things hadn't happened, how much longer could she have gone before cracking if she was already doing this to herself by immersing herself into work?
Yeah. And so the big patient that we get introduced to is Laura, who is brought in to see Rose after we learn she witnessed her professor violently kill himself. And when we first see her on screen, she is extremely jumpy and scared, and just like every little movement, every little thing is just terrifying her. And you kind of wonder, like, how does somebody get to that point? And then we spend the rest of this movie with Rose learning exactly how somebody gets to that point.
Exactly, because we get to watch Rose completely unravel right from that point on. The interesting thing is Caitlin Stasey, who played Laura, she's in the film, the short film.
Yeah.
She plays the lead role in Laura Hasn't Slept. And so that's kind of one way that Finn pulled, connected the two movies.
So in a way, the short film kind of plays as a prequel to this movie.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And if you watch the short film, which I'll talk about a little bit later, it ends in a way that you don't think that it could, let's just say. But it ends up working out, and we've got, this prequel.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, pretty early on. I mean, this is the first time I had seen this one. I was just kind of going in blind. And as I did, like I kind of did with Mad God, where I was like, I'm just going to even if things are wrong at first, I'm going to take some stabs and see where I'm at. And I think I did pretty good, because very early on when Rose and Laura are having this conversation, I have a note. I just said, I'm going to make an educated guess here. I was like, this whole movie is going to be an allegory for trauma and grief following you around, right? In everyday life and the people you see. It's like, yeah, no, I nailed that pretty early on. And then maybe mixed with the idea of wearing a fake smile or putting on a mask to act like everything's okay around others. It's like, I was like, it felt pretty heavy-handed, not heavy-handed in a bad way, but right off that first conversation, I was like, oh, that's what this movie is. Got it.
Yeah. It is. It's kind of like a metaphor. I mean, really. And I didn't get it the first time around. I kind of connected with it, but this time around, I was able to pay attention to some little details, and it really started connecting, the pieces of what she had been through in her life and how she's, dealt with it throughout the years. As part of my job, we've talked a little bit about it as a side note, but it's not going to be a long side note. One of the things we do where I work is work with creating screening tools for adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we always go back to is this notion of the invisible backpack. A child carries an invisible backpack around, and all the trauma gets stuffed in it. You don't see that it's weighing them down, but it is. And so I think she's definitely a candidate for wearing this backpack, because she's trying so hard not to have anything in her life be, out of, everything's okay. This is how I'm doing. And I mean, she even leaves the office, but then comes back in when the phone rings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I wonder if she would have just not answered that phone and left, then she would have gone home for the day, and some other poor doctor would have got stuck with Laura, and all would have gone in a different direction. Right? I
know, but then we wouldn't have the movie that we have now that is dealing with Rose.
Yeah. So we get the scene and everything with Laura, which ends, I was just like, well, that was horrifying. Thanks, movie. So Laura's just so overcome with fear and trauma. It's following her. She's talking about, it affects her whole life. It's telling her things. So it's almost like an anxiety aspect as well in the metaphor there. And I was like, well, that's all the deeper stuff I'm trying to parse out. But I was like, but on the surface, it's this thing gets to Laura, takes her over, possesses her. And then she slits her throat with this huge grin on her face right in front of Rose. And I was like, well, that was terrifying. Awesome. Thank you.
It kind of reminds me of The Happening, when people were taking themselves out.
Yeah.
Everything was fine, and they just, let's walk off this building, or, let's stab ourselves in the neck with a knitting needle. Those types of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, on the surface, if you look at her, I mean, she's talking about, Laura's saying, I'm a PhD candidate, I'm not, no place is safe, but I'm not crazy. She knows it sounds crazy, but she keeps saying, I'm not crazy. It's not a hallucination. She's just freaked out because basically she's been told that today's the day she's going to die.
Yeah.
Rose gets her to talk and go through all of this. But like you said, she slits her throat.
Yeah. And then even before the entity, the thing, whatever, starts kind of following Rose around after that, even before that, you can already see that it has affected her. It's like the ordeal has shaken her up, because we follow her back home after that. And I mean, yeah, it's a lot to hear and witness, but I mean, she's so full of nerves and kind of shaking. She has like the blood on her shirt. She's got to just like take her clothes off and jump in the shower. She's like chugging glasses of wine. Like you can see, like this has really messed with her. And that's when we saw the cat, and I was like, cute cat lives or we riot. And then I immediately had to go get my riot gear not long after, and it was no fun.
Not a fan.
Luckily, I had pitchforks ready, so that was good. Keep them packed.
Okay, just in case.
Yes, yeah.
Rima and I have this in common when it comes to animals. Like, we're both very much on the same page of, no. If you hurt the animal, we're not going to do it. Chris even gives me a hard time because I won't go watch John Wick.
But then you have seen this one, and you still did cover it, so...
I did. Yeah. I was not happy because I have to tell you that Mustache was adorable.
Yes. Yeah, I had a note where I said she named her cat Mustache. That's amazing.
That's amazing. Right?
Every way.
It's so cute, right? I'm like, Oh my gosh, I never would have thought to do that, but it's adorable.
Yeah.
And he's perfect. So perfect.
Perfect.
Yes. Perfect. This is when also we get to meet her fiance, Trevor.
Yes. Yeah, which he looked familiar, and it took me a second, and then I went, yes, freaking A-Train from The Boys. And I was excited. I was like, hell yeah. Also, he was in that one episode of Tales of the Walking Dead that I still haven't watched. So.
Whoa! Is it the one? I think I know what one it is. He wakes up in a village. Yes, I think I know exactly what one it is.
I don't know. I
liked that one.
It was the one I haven't watched because I stopped watching that. Like, I still haven't seen like the 2 or 3 last episodes of it, whatever, from that one. I don't know.
You know what? Once you stop watching Fear the Walking Dead, it becomes easier to stop watching, right? After that, you do. You're just like, I don't really. It's not that I didn't
like Tales. I don't know. It's just after the finale, I had like Walking Dead burnout. Like I was like, this was a great finale, and true. I need space for a while.
Yeah. But come on, Dead City's coming up. Are you excited?
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm nervous.
I really don't know. I'm gonna watch it, but I'm really not feeling super excited because I was like, again, it's like that Walking Dead burnout is still there a little bit. I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna give it a shot, but like, do we need it? I don't know. We'll see.
I know. The one that I do want is Rick and Michonne. Like that one I really want.
Yeah, I do want those pieces of the story for sure. Yeah.
But I don't know. Fingers crossed. It's something. It's got to replace some of the shows that have ended. Like, Yellow Jackets just ended. Ted Lasso just ended. From has only got like 3 episodes left. All of those things. I gotta have something else.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure this is gonna do it. We'll see.
Yeah. Hey, Righteous Gemstones comes back like next week, so I'm excited about that. So Rose returns to work the next day, and I like that this movie does those like, it's like the little, it's not even unsettling at first, but the more that it pops up, it becomes unsettling. And it's this imagery of just smiley faces everywhere. And it's like the most mundane, simple, like her coffee mug at work has a smiley face on it. It's just like a nice little detail. And then like later she's buying the train set for her nephew, and the box on the model train box has just this like old school, like 40s, 50s family smiling. And then like when she's back at the hospital, like the no pain has this huge smiley face on it. And then even when they go to like the other like prison to visit with Tally, the like no talking, has a big smiley face or something. And it's just like these little things. And I have to give, a little bit of, props to this movie because it's totally innocent, but it's creepy in that specific context. So that's a really great horror movie, like, aspect that I think is done well when you take something that's totally normal, mundane, everyday, and you make it scary because of the context of the story you're telling.
Yes,
but you don't actually change anything about what the image or whatever is. So it's really cool.
Yeah. I liked that as well. I've seen one of those smiley face signs in a hospital. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It has new meaning now, so it's kind of weird when I see it. What did you think of Trevor when you first met him?
I liked him.
I thought it was nice. I mean, especially they go out to dinner with her sister, Holly.
Yeah. Well, he seemed really attentive because it was him that was like, we couldn't skip dinner. If you've had a rough day, we're not going to exacerbate it by going to see your terrible sister.
Yeah. And her husband, Greg. Yeah, exactly.
So it was kind of like his. So I liked him at first, and then he seemed very much like, texting her the next day, like, I hope you had a better day, and like all of these things. I was like, he's great. And then as soon as like kind of what she calls him out for later, where she was just like, things get a little difficult, and your picture perfect life out of hand, and you're like, you can't handle it. Because then you see some of the stuff that he says, like, yeah, it's a lot to deal with some of the stuff she's doing or going through, but he responds to it in a terrible way. He does seem very self-centered by the end that we see him.
So much. He talks about hitching his horse to her or hitching his life to her for the future and inheriting mental illness. Oh, I was just kind of like, okay, Rose, kick him out. He is not. You might think you know him, but you do not. He's got a side to him that I just don't. I think he was kind of self-centered. And I kind of got that impression a little bit earlier because he's like, oh, Rose, did you break another glass?
I laughed so hard at that. I laughed so hard at that line because I literally had just made a note. So I have a note where I said, this lady's got to have an extraordinate wine glass budget because one gets busted in the kitchen floor daily as far as we followed it so far. Exactly. And so since I made that note and then he goes, did you break another wine glass? I laughed so hard because I was like, I just pointed that out.
Yeah, it was real. Like, I was just kind of like, Trevor, I feel like Trevor is a little high maintenance because he's asking her about setting the alarm. And she's like, well, I set it by accident. And because she had the cops at the house, the alarm goes off. And he's just wondering, well, why was it on? And are you okay? And then she's kind of looks like she wants to tell him no. But then she's like, oh, yeah, everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, okay, you're just placating him. Why can't you be honest and tell him what's really going on? Well, we find out later why, because he's self-centered and he can't handle anyone else going. He can't be there to be that supportive person, except she's been there and is supportive of him. So it's kind of like, yeah, that seems a little one-sided. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rose continues to kind of look at, because she's just still shaken up, even before she's seen stuff again, but just this Laura situation has really kind of messed with her. So she's going back and looking through some of the, like the patient file and some of the notes and realizing that, Professor Munoz had also like had this big smile on his face when he died in front of Laura, that she makes that note. That was like, well, that is an odd thing because I saw the same thing. And then she's like looking out the window while on the phone and this like figure standing out in the courtyard. So she's getting a little unsettled and we can tell it's like, okay, so whatever it is has passed on to her. And then that's confirmed by the, you're gonna die from Carl.
I know, poor Carl.
Carl, because he was really just laying in his bed, minding his own business, and he's getting 5150. So
yeah.
Terrible. Which I know that reference. I know that code, what that means, because it's just it's a code for a danger to yourself and others. It's the medical code for that. I think I really learned it through wrestling. I learned everything through wrestling because there's like a faction. It's called 5150. And I was like, why are they called that? And I was like, oh, that's why. Got it.
I don't think they're around anymore right now.
I don't know. Haven't followed MLW in a while. But Rose does get a week off of work for that ordeal, so I guess that's nice. She's got a great boss. Again, Cal Penn. That was a nice surprise.
That was great.
I left
right?
him.
He was great. When I realized that he was, in this movie, because he took a little bit of a break from acting.
Yeah.
To go work in the White House. But, yeah, as her boss, he's trying to help her. He's trying to do what he can. He's forcing her to take time. Because she doesn't know what to do with herself. And that's when she goes to see her therapist because she wants this drug because she's been seeing and hearing things. And her therapist doesn't want to give it to her. And it's just kind of like, well, let's keep talking this out. Let's talk about, let's try to get to the bottom of this. And that's where we start to realize that her mother committed suicide. But the therapist is saying, you've not really dealt with it. You still blame yourself. Laura was disturbed. She wasn't your patient. You knew her for 10 minutes. She was a disturbed young woman. She's trying to talk her out of being so anxious about things.
Yeah.
And you could tell that I don't think they've seen each other in quite a while because then Northcott is talking about, well, you need to, come see me again regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to have appointments.
Yeah, but it does seem like small, little, strange things. But it starts ramping up quickly. We get are you alone in the house? Are you sure? Mm-hmm. Are you sure you didn't let something inside, Rose? Look behind you.
Oh, my God.
And then the phone's not even actually in her hand. And it's just like that whole sequence. I was like, well, that's beyond creepy. And it's also showing that it's all in her head. Like, it's also real in a horror aspect, but it's like a mental terror. Like, nobody else experiences any of it. It's all happening within her head.
Yeah. And she's just, she's scared because she thinks she's answering the phone and talking with the alarm company, and then the phone rings, and she's kind of snapped out of it.
Huh? Yeah, it's very crazy. And then she's like listening in for voices that are there on the recording from her meeting with Laura, but then the voices are gone. And then I had a question. I was like, Daphne, when you edit this podcast, do you get your face really close to the screen so you can hear better? Is that how that works?
No. I have headphones on and I turn it up.
Yeah.
And I can see the
because she was turning the volume up, but then she like got her face really close to the screen to like look at the waves, and I was like, that's not going to help. But I don't know. It also makes sense because I also turn down the radio in my car when I'm trying to like see where I'm going better. So,
I do the same
that's
thing.
That's a thing. Yeah.
Why do we do that?
I don't, because it kind of feels similar where it's
yes.
Like if I'm trying to find an address or something, I'm like, I have to turn the sound down on the music or whatever in my car. It doesn't affect that. Those two things are completely separate, but it's a weird human brain thing.
Yeah, it is. We can't help it. It's just part of who we are. Mm-hmm. But I do the same thing when I'm going places that I'm not sure where I am. It's like, I got to turn this down, or I'll even turn it off. And it's like, why am I doing that? Is it a concentration thing? But I'm looking with my eyes. It's not like someone's going to come up from the street and yell, you're on Jones Street. You're on Jones Street right over here. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly.
Yeah. Rose is going to take this. Well, she's got some time off from work now. So let's go celebrate her nephew Jackson's birthday.
Oh, fuck.
And it's the children's birthday party ever. So also that's when I had to go get my riot gear out of the closet. Let the riot commence. But then after that whole ordeal, Rose is in the ER. She's all cut up. She's having a bad time. And the worst is she needs to get back home so she can feed her model train. Too soon?
Oh, babe. Way too soon. She was devastated. When her nephew opened the box and it was Mustache in the box. And I have to say this, prop department, when she walked in holding that box, it didn't look like she was holding a box with like a 12-pound cat in it. It looked like she was holding a box with very little in it, to be honest. Yeah. I'm like, no, one of my cats, Chloe, is 10 pounds. And she, no. There's a weight thing there with the box.
Yeah, and then she's like, Trevor picks her up and, they're having that conversation in the car, which is where he, like, can't handle it, and she's trying her best, which is, it's funny but not funny, where she'll, like, lash out a bit, like, no, you listen to me! I'm sorry. Like, she would apologize after everything. But then, she says, I'm afraid something bad is gonna happen. And I just, like, almost expected him to say, well, something bad already has happened. You gave a 7-year-old a dead cat for his birthday, so, there's that.
Yeah. I mean, when she was in the hospital, Desai was trying to get to the bottom of it. He was trying to help her, because she fell backwards through a glass coffee table, which basically sliced her arms to, it's like she went through a barbed wire match on AEW and she's all scratched up. Only probably 10 times worse. Anyway.
Yeah, so they're having this conversation in the car, and then he's like, you tell me it's a ghost? And she's like, not a ghost. It's something else. It's not the house that's haunted. Oh, sorry. Wrong movie. But we see what she's going through. And that's honestly this intense uncertainty and having no grip on reality. Like, what's real? That's the true horror of this movie. And so, I don't know, that's one of the things that, like, with the previews and stuff before theaters, one of the reasons I didn't go see it in theaters is because they gave so much emphasis on the smiley faces in the trailer that I was like, And honestly, it's like, they're a decent visual for horror to some extent, but the psychological terror is the actual scary part of this movie. It's more, psychological horror is more effective than scary monsters most of the time, typically.
Well, and they put, one of the coolest gags in the whole movie was the sister running to the car, stopping, and then her head flipping down and she's smiling.
Yeah.
Which, of course, wasn't real. But that was one of the biggest gags in the movie.
Yeah.
Why would you... I don't know why you would
I feel like because what makes the movie really good is that the smile visuals were very few and far between. So they was used very sparingly, because if it was overdone, I think it would have really diminished the product. But because they focused on the psychological and mental side of it, that's why it was great. But then the problem is I feel like they showed every single one of the smiley gags in the trailer.
They did. They did. When I watched it in the theater, I remember when it was over, I'm like, okay, this was decent. However, they showed the most intense pieces in the trailer. We didn't, but you really couldn't tell from the trailer how intense, like, the psychological piece was.
Yeah.
You didn't get that picture unless you went to see it.
And another casting little note. I'm just throwing these in now as I'm going instead of... but that's fine. Because we know Rose needs some medical help, but I didn't expect her to go see Nurse Carla Turk. Oh, never mind. It's just Judy Reyes playing a different character. Boo! She's the professor's wife. Yes. I love Judy Reyes so freaking much. When it comes to, like, some of the best TV characters in existence, her playing Nurse Carla on Scrubs is, like, top tier, top level.
Another show I haven't seen.
Get on it.
You keep telling me that. I'll never be caught up on TV.
But yeah, so through Professor Munoz's wife, Rose learns that he experienced all the same things that Laura did, and that has passed to her, and then it all was passed to him the same way. So yeah, that was, I guess, some enlightening story stuff. That conversation doesn't end well, but she got some information out of it.
At some points in this movie, when the phone rang, I expected a voice on the end of the line to say, 7 days.
Yeah. If you're lucky.
Yeah. I expected it. It didn't happen, but there was that little element that reminded me a lot of the Ring, or Ringo.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's when Rose goes to her ex, Joel, the detective, to try to backtrack the situation as far as she can. And this is where we learn that, like, well, Angela Powell killed herself in front of Gabriel Munoz, and then she saw somebody else do the same, and it goes back all the way back to, other stuff that she finds out later through him. But even just those two, she's like, I need somebody to talk about this. And she can't talk about it to A-Train. I mean, Trevor. He's not very receptive.
He is not receptive. We really don't see him that much. I don't know if we see him at all after that.
No.
It's only off screen that he has any presence at all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait. No, we did. So she does go to Joel's to learn more about, like, Angela Powell was one of the ones. Yeah. But then she goes home after. Yeah,
that's when she goes to Trevor, but he's not very receptive. He brought in Dr. Northcott, and she feels ambushed, which, is fair.
Yeah.
So she leaves. And then she goes to her sister, which I don't know if that was a great idea to begin with.
Yeah.
She's just awful. And then Holly's telling her that she feels like she's following in the footsteps of their mother. So also not helpful at all.
No. But Joel calls her with information. There were 20 cases total that he was able to identify and 19 suicides. So that meant that one person lived, and that was Robert Talley.
Yeah. Which, again, casting. This movie was just a lineup of fun appearances in casting for me. I was, oh my god, that person! Ooh, that person! That one! Because we didn't talk about Dr. Northcott. I was like, freaking Robin Weigert.
I know!
Calamity Jane herself.
Yes!
I love it.
Wait, you've seen Deadwood?
I have. Not all of it. I stopped in, like, season 3, but I need to catch
Pake.
up. But I've seen a lot of, like,
that is one of my favorite TV series. Mr. Wu was one of my favorite characters. Mm-hmm. And Jane...
Yeah, so I immediately recognized her. I'm like, ah!
Yeah. She was also on Sons of Anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But after seeing her as Calamity Jane on Deadwood, and being all dirty and tired and haggard all the time, she cleans up really, really well.
Absolutely.
Like, to be this therapist who's so, like, trying to help her.
Yeah.
Except that it's not helping this situation.
Yeah, we are going with that because, you mentioned Robert Talley, which, again, speaking of Turk, a different Turk, not Carla Turk from Scrubs, but Turk Barrett from the Netflix Marvel shows, is Rob Morgan, plays those, who plays Robert Talley here. He's also our beloved, incompetent, I don't know, whatever you want to give him, Officer Powell in Stranger Things.
Yes, I think incompetent goes along better.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tally tells Rose that whatever it is, has to pass through trauma. So you'd have to kill someone in front of a witness in a horrific way in order to survive it and pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see how he really freaks out when he learns that it's her that's carrying it right now, which makes sense, rightfully so, because he's like, it made its way back to him. So he's like,
get out, go
leave
away
now. Yeah. And then Dr. Northcott comes over to check on Rose. Mm-hmm. And while that's happening, Dr. Northcott calls to check on Rose. Wait.
Yes.
Oh, damn.
Exactly. You know what? It was at that point where I decided that there's this actor on From that should have been in this movie. And it's the guy who plays Smiley, because his smile would have been perfect for this movie.
Yes.
And it's 100% real. Like, that's how he smiles.
Yeah.
So it'd have been perfect if he'd been
Alex
on it.
and Liz interviewed him. It was awesome. I did listen to that one. I loved it.
It was his first interview.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
very cool.
So yeah, we get this idea, okay, murder someone and then you get the thing to leave you alone, but then you go to prison. So is that Is that a good trade?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think so.
But then we get this whole weird dream sequence kind of thing of her attempting that, and then it just going off the rails, and it was really weird.
It was. She was really murdering Carl. She basically decided to murder Carl. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Carl didn't do anything to you. Why are you trying to kill him?
And then why would you want to pass it on to Cal Penn there? He's amazing. Why would you do that?
Exactly. No.
So,
that's not who you are, Rose. It's not who you are.
So that's not what happened, though. Again, it was like a weird dream kind of thing. Her kind of thinking about it and then realizing, nope, bad idea. So then she has the realization that I had been thinking pretty much the entire movie. I was like, why is nobody thinking about this? So finally what happened was like, and there you go. Is if you can't save yourself, if you come to that conclusion, then you need to completely isolate yourself somehow. Because as we know how this system works, no witnesses, no spread.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
So she had a good idea. The problem is this. Joel doesn't listen.
Mm-mm. Man, am I right?
Yeah. Oh my god. So she goes to the cabin. And this is where we learn something very important.
Mm-hmm.
That her mother did not commit suicide.
Well,
she didn't.
Yes and no.
I mean, it was kind of an accident. And Rose could have helped her.
Yeah.
And she chose to close the door.
Mm-hmm.
And this,
I think it was a purposeful OD. But then she had the moment to where she realized it was a mistake and did want Rose to like call somebody for help, and then she didn't.
Nope. She made the choice not to. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, she went on to be a psychologist, and it's like, I thought with doctors, I know with medical doctors, it's like, first do no harm. It's like, well,
she hadn't taken the oath yet.
That's true. But she definitely didn't help her mother.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make me wonder how much of it she talked to Northcott about. Like, did she reveal the whole truth that she actually let her mother die?
She probably did, because I know when she's talking to her, there was this whole guilt portion of that.
Yes.
And that we kind of was like, well, why would you feel guilty about that? You were a little kid. So that's where the guilt part comes in. That's where you realize that. So I think because even like Dr. Northcott was telling her, let it go.
Yeah. Let it go.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, here that's kind of her plan, is out to this old childhood home out in the country, face the thing there, nobody else around. And she does. She Elsa's it, right? You gotta tell it just to let it go. You know, facing the monster is facing her fear, her guilt, her trauma, all of it. You know, it's my mind. So it will be in there, but she has to take control of it instead of it taking her. And sets it on fire, and she goes away, and she's scot-free. End of the movie. Yay! Happy ending. The end.
Nope.
I said the end.
Unfortunately, that was just another one of these fever dreams that she has.
We're going to pretend it didn't happen. I said the
end. That reminds me of TV series that you wish had ended like 2 or 3 episodes earlier. Or a season earlier, and they don't. Well, this is kind of Rose's happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really happen.
Yeah, you're right. I do have one more note after that where I say, you just couldn't let it be a happy ending, could you, you bastard of a movie?
Nope, could not. Could not do it. She realizes that she's still at the house, and yeah, it kind of takes her over, and she douses herself with gasoline. Joel, because he can't listen, shows up and watches her burn. And he's infected by it.
And the cycle continues.
Yep. Couldn't end.
The end. All right. Wasn't that a great story? Good night, kids.
This isn't for kids, Pake. You and I both know that. It's not for children. Not gonna happen.
Oh, there's not the like nighttime like storybook version of this that I can read to my niece?
No. No.
Are you sure?
No.
Maybe I'll write it.
Maybe you'll write it. Okay, for children? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's appropriate.
That won't get any angry letters from parents at all.
Well, it could be added to a list of books that are not available to children at school.
You're saying it would become a banned book?
Yes.
But we want kids to read banned books.
Yes, we do.
So I should write it. That's what you're saying. Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, you should write it.
I've learned it's a good idea. Good.
It is. It's a great idea. Such a great idea for you to write it.
Yes.
I want an autographed copy.
Okay. It'll be $14.99.
Okay. There's no discount.
Mm-mm. Gotta make money. No. Because if I sell all the copies that I'm likely to sell, I'll make $14.99.
Yeah, because I'll be the other one that buys
right.
one. Okay. I'll have to wait till my nieces are like 18 and 20 before I can read it to them, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, man. We're off the rails. That's okay. I love it.
We are, but that's
also all the notes I have about Rose. We've finished the story. That's most of the notes I have in general.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I have any others that I want to talk about. I think, if I remember correctly, Kyle Gallner played Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I guess I knew it. He was Zach, who was Beth's love interest for one episode of The Walking Dead. He's been in so many different things, but whenever I see him in anything, I always go back to that one episode of The Walking Dead that he was in.
Huh.
I'm like, oh, you seem like a great new character. That means you'll probably last a day or two at the most. You're not going to make it.
Oh, look at this new guy. I think he's going to fit into the group really, and he's gone. Yeah. That's how that goes.
He also played Quentin Smith in the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Yeah. And he's
I saw it once. I don't remember much of anything about it.
Yeah, no.
Very little.
He's on the Dead by Daylight game. He's one of the playable survivors.
Oh, cool. Good for him.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, as far as Joel, I don't have a lot of notes about him. Really just his partner at the beginning of the movie. I was like, this is a terrible detective. He is awful at human empathy. Got it.
It's true, though. He was. He was so awful. Terrible.
Yeah, and then you could learn pretty early on. You're like, oh, they have a history of some kind, Rose and Joel, like an ex or something. And then at first I thought he was kind of weird. I'm like, I don't know. I had in my mind, I was like, was it his fault that there's a breakup? Was there something wrong with him? And now he's like coming around to the hospital and it's like, leave her alone. So I felt like I wasn't going to like him. I thought he was going to be like a kind of a problematic character at first. But then he comes through with like, he kept digging and saw the pattern that was going on after Rose came to him and had that outlier. So he gets that information, even drives her out there to see Tally herself. And I was like, oh no, Joel comes through. I actually like him now. He's actually the better one. Good.
Yeah.
He has replaced Trevor. Good.
He really cared about her, and you could tell they had a history.
Yeah.
And then in her fever dream, she's talking about how she didn't let her walls down to let him in. So you know that there was something there.
Yeah.
But you get why she didn't let her walls down, because she had a really shitty childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know what happened after her mother died.
Yeah.
You know, other than her sister became, so focused on material possessions.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's literally like I have 2 more notes at all. And then I'm done completely with all notes. Is just, about Holly and her husband and how freaking unbearable they are. Just pretentious, narcissistic, douchey people. Like when they're having that dinner and Holly keeps bothering Rose about selling the home that she goes to at the end, while she's constantly complaining about all the things that her son is doing. And then just like all these like, oh my God, I haven't even been to Pilates. I'm like awake. Nah. And it's like, oh God, shut up. And then her husband Greg, I don't care.
He's
he
just
seems
as bad.
to have the same view of Rose's profession and patience as that jerk detective from earlier did. So
yeah, it's very much, why would you want to work in a dirty hospital? You need to get out there and get in private practice. And I did love that Trevor kind of backed her up in that moment and said, hey, Rose would do it for free. She loves being a doctor. She loves helping people. That, I think, was the last good thing he did. Everything else after that, he was just kind of like, not nice.
And then, like, the real victim of this movie, well, besides Mustache, that one's the biggest one.
Yes.
But then other than that is this little boy Jackson. I'm like, this poor little kid, all he sees of his aunt lately is just pure insanity. Because I don't even know why they included the scene of him, like, watching her freak out in the car from out the window, but they just had to linger on it for a second to be like, well, this kid's traumatized now, too. Cool.
I wondered if that was going to come back into play, and it never did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why did we have to see that? That's sad.
I know. I was, like, worried for a moment. I'm like, is she going to decide to kill somebody? And is she going to kill her sister in front of her son? And that's where it goes? I was like, we're not going that dark, are we?
No. I did wonder. I'd rather the sister have sacrificed herself because she was kind of a waste of space. Did not like it. I mean, I get wanting to provide for your family and do nice things, especially when you have such a terrible childhood. But you don't have to be so driven by materialistic tendencies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more to life than having everything, because you can't take it with you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
And our customs are real strict.
Yeah, especially, depending on what train you're on. If you're going north or south.
But yeah, so that is all the notes. I'm done.
All right, me too, except for my usual stuff. So I'm going to jump right into behind the scenes. So, as I said, this is based on Finn's short film, Laura Hasn't Slept, which debuted at South by Southwest in 2020, which also means that they pulled this together pretty quickly, because that's only a couple of years ago. And the premise of this short film, I think it's like 11 or 12 minutes long, is that a young woman is seeking help from her therapist to rid herself of this nightmare that is recurring. And while the end of the short film seems to indicate that the character does not survive, Laura later appears in Smile, where she seeks help from Dr. Cotter, Rose, indicating that there was no resolution to Laura's issues in Laura Hasn't Slept, and it was basically a continued hallucination. And then the character of Laura actually sets in motion everything that we see in the full movie. Original title for this film was Something's Wrong with Rose. I'm glad they changed it, because I think Smile is a much more ominous title.
Yeah.
than Something's Wrong with Rose. The smiles in this film are entirely natural. They didn't use any visual effects, despite the studio suggestion to alter them. The director, Parker Finn, said nope. He remained steadfast in his vision, insisting, preserving their unsettling and authentic nature. In a viral marketing stunt shortly before its release, actors from the film made surprise appearances at baseball games. They were positioned behind home plate wearing Smile shirts. They sat motionless, smiling into the camera, generating intrigue and concern among the audience. A similar occurrence took place during a segment of the Today Show where another actor appeared amidst the crowd.
I remember seeing all that stuff.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, I remember seeing all that stuff.
Yeah, there's got to be something on YouTube. So other promotional materials that were released included this 8-second teaser and a 40-second teaser trailer that was shown at screenings of Top Gun Maverick and Crimes of the Future. To achieve the practical effects in the film, Finn enlisted the expertise of Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr. from Amalgamated Dynamics. Finn has credited them as being a significant inspiration for his career in horror filmmaking, citing their impressive work in movies like Aliens. Finn said that the Zoom call he had with the two boiled down to him saying, "You guys don't understand. You changed my childhood. This is the reason I wanted to make movies." And continued with them geeking out for over 2 hours.
Nice.
I know you can appreciate that, right?
Absolutely.
Paramount initially was going to release this movie on the streaming platform Paramount Plus, which is now MGM. However, the test audience, it went really well in front of them. So they did a full theatrical release in the US, and it exceeded expectations, grossing $22 million during the opening weekend, which completely surprised them. And also that made back its entire budget in the first weekend. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
So, finally, at CinemaCon 2023, Paramount Pictures made an official announcement confirming the green light for a sequel to the film. So the good news is, the project is in pre-production. Parker Finn is returning as the writer and director, which we always like when sequels bring back the writers, the original creators. Release date is subject to change. The tentative plan is to release the sequel in 2024. No idea if the writer's strike is affecting this at all.
Mm-hmm. Good to know.
But yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because it definitely left itself open to a sequel.
It did.
And I'm not against the idea of a sequel as long as it's not terrible. It could go either way. We'll see.
I think as long as Parker Finn's involved, it has potential. Because it's his story that he wants to tell. Yeah. And I can get behind that.
For sure.
That's pretty much it.
That's Smile. Say cheese. We did it.
Well, if you'd like to submit some feedback for this episode or any of our others, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast. Email us, runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. And talking about sharing the love, of course, got to go ahead and give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. My other podcast, Strange Indeed, we are in Black Mirror Season 6. Our episode for the first episode of that, Joan is Awful, is up now, so you can go check that out. It was a fun conversation, quite a fun episode, for sure. It was very, very interesting, wild, wacky Black Mirror episode with some thoughtful stuff in there, of course. Some stuff to really make you like, because that's what Black Mirror does really well.
Do you find yourself waiting for it? Like when you're watching the episode, you're like, okay, I'm watching this, and the Black Mirror twist is coming. Something's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That one, I was just like, I'm along for the ride. Let's see what happens. But yeah, so that one's up. But if you are interested, if you're watching Black Mirror and you want to send in some feedback, I'll give another little feedback call out to me and Rima over on Strange Indeed for episode 2, Lock Henry, because we will be recording that at the beginning of this next week. Then, yeah, go to podcastica.com to find that out, or go to the Strange Indeed Facebook page, because we have posts for every episode of this new season that you can go ahead and watch ahead and leave feedback for. Because, yeah, I'm especially Black Mirror, I like knowing what other people think about things. And, yeah, I'm not going to give anything away, but yeah, episode 2, Lock Henry, we'll be doing this next week, and talk about one that I was the whole time going, all right, now where's the twist on this one? So,
I kind of started to figure it out, but I didn't know the extent of it until it really, like, hit with the punch, and it's like, okay, I thought one thing, but this is way more than I thought it was going to be. Okay.
Right.
They keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I love that show so much, so I'm excited that we're covering it. We're in season 6 here, so Strange Indeed. Definitely go check that out. But yeah, lots of other great stuff going on in Podcastica. What is From Cast? Alex and Lizzie over there. Season 2 of From is wrapped. It's done. So they'll have the, episode for the finale. That's up. You can go check that out. And why not go ahead and give one more big punch to end that season with their uploads by having another interview with Liz Saunders, who plays Donna on the show, one of the major cast members and a very important role in that show. I think she was the first interview they ever did, and it's full circle that they've got her back again at the end of this season. So definitely want to go check that out. That's going to be really cool. So yeah, again, I say this every week. If you're a fan of From, check out their podcast. If you're not a fan of From, check out From and become a fan, because it's such a good show. Very underrated show.
They got some good news. It dropped today that From was renewed for season 3.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I thought it already was.
I thought it was too.
But then I thought maybe it was. I'm thinking of Yellow Jackets. But yeah, From was renewed for season 3. And Alex has told me that they have some fun things planned for the downtime in between seasons. Nice. So you're definitely going to want to follow the podcast to see what they're up to over there. Yeah. They're pretty focused and dedicated to bring things to light.
So hop on the From train, or should I say the bus, hop on the From bus maybe, and then check out that podcast, because, yeah, they keep fun stuff going all the time.
Yes.
Also, on the Cast of Us, Walking Dead, Dead City is here. It's happening. So episode 2 is out now. The podcast for that is up as well. Ben is joined by Walking Dead cast / now Cast of Us usual co-host, Lucy. So that's a big one to go check out for sure. Lucy back in the world of The Walking Dead on the podcast. So if you're checking that out, yeah, make sure to listen to that. Ben's a great, host of this show. I think he's doing a great job, and he's having fun with it, so that's awesome. Give Jason a little break. And Ben's pulling double duty right now this week as well, because his other podcast, Revisited, with him and Kristen, as they're continuing to break through and rewatch all of Lost, and they're in season 6 of that one right now. In that final stretch, I say stretch, I mean they're in episode 6, so they still got a little ways to go, but they're in that final season. So definitely check that out. And also his Wilhelm podcast. Nothing new right away, but he's got some stuff planned, got some stuff coming up. And there's a lot of really great interviews and things. So that's always just a great podcast for me to plug and say, hey, go check out the backlog of interviews and stuff that Ben has done over there on Wilhelm, because there's some really cool stuff.
Yeah, he definitely has some good stuff planned too.
And then TV Podcast Industries and Panels to Pixels, I think, have Secret Invasion episodes up for this week. So the Secret Invasion over on Disney Plus, the new Marvel show, starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, back in a Disney Plus show. I've only watched the first episode so far, still haven't gotten to the second one. It has been a very busy week. But
for sure.
The first episode was great. So definitely check out their coverage over on TV Podcast Industries and Panels to Pixels. Panels also just put out their episode for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And yeah, such a good movie. I love the Spider-Verse movies a lot. So the second one definitely holds up. It's great. It's exactly what it needed to be. And yeah, that's pretty much everything else going on in other podcasts, but we keep trucking over here. So what do we got next week on Run for Your Lives?
Okay. So after encountering a warning, or actually multiple warnings, about the dangers of the full moon from the locals, David and Jack find themselves attacked by a mysterious creature. As David recovers in a London hospital, he begins experiencing disturbing visions and nightmares, and is haunted by a decaying specter. With the help of his doctor and his nurse, Alex, who let's just say goes above and beyond in bringing him back to health, David tries to figure out what's happening and how to stop it. Next week, we are going way back to 1981 to discuss the John Landis film, An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah. It's an interesting one for sure. It was my first time watching that one, so Had a lot of interesting thoughts.
Love to go back to those. Love to dig into those, especially when you haven't seen it. I always think that you're going to completely trash something, but you always bring your clever insight to the table. So I never feel like you're completely damning the film, except for one film, one time.
I usually won't trash anything for being silly or goofy, because I like that. At least when it's supposed to be, when they do it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's when they're trying to be serious and it comes across as real goofy and silly. Then we have a problem.
This one was a bit OTT.
Yeah, for sure.
But fun. With that, we've reached the end of another terrifying episode of Run for Your Lives. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.
Fight for it.